Good evening. Welcome to America's Heroes Group Roundtable live stream digital media show. I'm your host, U.S. Army Combat Medic and Flight Surgeon Colonel Dr. Damon Arnold, U.S. Army National Guard retired. We have a guest speaker tonight, David Milanec, an extraordinary financial expert. He actually is just finishing up with a client, will be with us very shortly, but he's going to be talking to us about April's tax filing deadline. Now, I'm not sure about you, but with all the stuff going on in Washington, D.C., with cuts that being made to different agencies, I am not sure of where I am. I have still am putting my taxes together to file them. I know some people have filed early because they're worried about whether we have enough personnel in the in the government to actually file and to process our taxes in a timely manner and in a correct manner. That's going to be a pretty big strain if they are, removing people who normally help prepare our taxes and to distribute them in a timely manner. So we also have, the advent of things coming on with how to spend our money. How we should be thinking about spending our money from a taxing perspective, because now we're facing potential tariffs, maybe higher prices for items like homes and cars, things that are coming down the road. And it's going to be important for us to make sure that we are walking down the right financial path as we're preparing for next year's taxes and and reflection on this past year and what we should be doing to make sure these taxes are done in a timely manner and a correct manner. The tax laws also sometimes change as time goes on, and they can have implications for what you're doing. So we have David Milanec, an extraordinary financial expert who's going to help us with some of those issues. April's tax filing deadline is approaching, and we're talking about reflection on 2024, but we have 2025 coming up, so maybe he can give us a bird's eye view of what the future looks like in a very chaotic.
What the future looks like for taxes? Oh, I could not tell you. I couldn't tell you what the future looks like for anything related to government right now. The only thing I can really be comfortable commenting on right now is that we are coming up very close on the 2024 filing deadline for individuals.
Mm-hmm.
And it is very important that you make sure you get your filing in on time. And if you don't have your paperwork together and you don't feel like you have all the documentation you need to report everything correctly on your taxes, there is actually an automatic 6-month extension that is available to all taxpayers just by simply filing a form. There is actually no downside to having that extension filed. At Katz Milanec, we actually automatically file extensions for all of our clients once they have been a client with us for at least 1 year. And the reason for that is there are 2 benefits to filing an extension for a taxpayer and 0 downsides. The 2 benefits are that you get an additional 6 months to file your original tax return timely, and also you get 6 additional months to file an amended return timely. So if you file a return and then you realize that you didn't include something and you could get an even bigger refund, you have an additional 6 months down the road to go back and file that claim and get the additional money back from the IRS. If anyone out there needs help with any of that, please feel free to give us a call, 708-914-8220. Again, 708-914-8220. And to expound on that point about if you don't have all of your documents, there are times and situations where, for some reason, a taxpayer has difficulty with or cannot for some reason or another, get a document that is required for them to file their return. In those situations, we can file with the IRS something called a power of attorney. Now, I don't want anyone to panic when I say that. That doesn't mean that we can go take your bank accounts and take your money and everything like that. It means that we can represent you before the IRS, and it means that we can also get any information, including information returns that were filed under your Social Security number that the IRS has, from the IRS. We can obtain that information. So if you're having difficulty getting a document for whatever reason, we can help you with that, and we can then help you file a correct and appropriate tax return.
Oh, fantastic. So, I was sort of kidding around about the future, but, do you see any, have you seen any problems with people filing so far, as far as the, return timeframes and that kind of thing, or
That's the biggest problem that I've actually noticed is I've had a lot of people reporting to me that despite the fact that we had filed for them 3, 4, 5 weeks ago, they haven't received the refund. So I don't know what's causing that, but that is currently the biggest issue that I am aware of.
Yeah. For veterans, what do you think? Is there anything special that veterans need to consider when filing taxes? Is there anything, that...
Okay, so there are a few things. One is that so the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017 removed the moving expenses deduction for most taxpayers. So in other words, you used to, if you moved, let's say, from New York to California, basically you moved over 50 miles from where you lived before, and you did that to move for a new job, more or less. You would be eligible to deduct all the expenses involved in your move from your AGI on your tax return.
Okay.
Now most taxpayers don't have that available to them. However, the deduction was preserved for veterans. So if you are a veteran who had to move and incurred costs, you still can claim that deduction. Additionally, veterans in certain states are eligible to receive reductions in their taxable income or have tax credits just for being veterans. So, like, for example, in Indiana, there is a deduction of $5,000 just for you got your wages from the military.
Wow.
And so another thing that I'll point out here is I know a lot of veterans are small business owners, and I know the Office of Veteran Affairs is very encouraging of former vets to become business owners. And they have a lot of programs for that, VOSV programs and everything. For those veterans out there that own a small business, really, or anybody who owns a small business, there is a tax credit in the state of Illinois specifically, and I bring this up because our firm is based in Illinois. In the state of Illinois, and I think this tax program exists in other states as well, but I'm not as familiar with the mechanisms in those other states. But the tax credit is it's called the angel investment credit. And what it does is a business has to get certified with the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity. Once the business gets certified, they can then seek out an investor. That investor can invest as little as $10,000 and as much as $2 million.
Wow.
For every dollar the investor invests, that investor will they'll have to apply to the Department of Commerce and Economic Employment Opportunity as well to get the credit. But once they apply and get the credit, they're eligible for a credit of up to 25% of whatever they invest. Or if it is specifically what's called a set-aside business, which is a business that's owned by a minority, a disabled person, a woman, I believe also, or a veteran, it is a 35% credit. So, so for someone who has money to invest, and I know there are other veterans out there who have money to invest, if they wanted to invest in a business and potentially receive some cash flow from that, they would be able to not only receive that cash flow from that, but also effectively completely eliminate their state tax obligation for multiple years.
Wow.
let's say we invest $2 million and we get a 35% credit. That means we have a $700,000 tax credit from the state of Illinois, and we have 5 years to write that off on our tax returns.
5 years. Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah, and these are just a few of the strategies that we can employ to help you grow a business, keep as much of the money in that business as possible, and help you to then be able to take that money out of the business and turn it into wealth for you and your family. I'm sure everyone out there is interested in that. Please give us a call, 708-914-8220. Again, 708-914-8220.
Yeah, this is why I was saying that you're an extraordinary financial expert, because, when people look at people and, in your field, they look at you and say, oh, he just does taxes. But it's more than taxes. It's really understanding financial literacy and understanding how to apply those principles so that your taxes are not a problem.
Yeah, filling out the tax forms is not that valuable of a service. Quite frankly, you give me someone who's high school educated and has a reasonable amount of intelligence, I could teach him in 2 weeks how to fill out a tax return. It's not that valuable of a skill. And accordingly, on the market, it's not compensated that highly. The real value, and the real value that we provide, is in consulting with small businesses, consulting with individuals, helping them figure out how to plan for their goals. First of all, helping them figure out what their goals are, because in some cases, people come in and say, I have $300,000 and no idea what to do with it. I have had people say that to me before. And so my response has to be, okay, here are some options.
Right.
Then obviously that person has to choose what they believe the best option is for them. But yeah, tax planning is very important. And that's what I'm talking about here, because tax planning is tax planning is when you consider your financial situation and make sure that you're not going to end up with a huge tax bill at the end of the year.
Yeah, there's some things too that, you're just making me think about so many things. You go to the store, you go to a restaurant, you get your receipts, you throw them away. You have your credit card that gives you 5% cash back if you remember to sign up every 3 months. To have that thing going. And there's so many different intricacies that people have. what's important for people to keep, or what kinds of record keeping important for people?
Absolutely, record keeping is important. First off, if you own a business and you don't have a profit and loss and a balance sheet, you don't have financial statements, how do you know how your business is? How do you know the health of your business?
Mhm.
How would you measure? You're a doctor, Dr. Arnold. How
Yeah.
would you measure someone's health? You would take their vitals and you would
Right.
record them and you would compare them to what the average is, correct?
Right. Yeah.
In the financial world, the way we take someone's vitals is to prepare their profit and loss, to prepare their financial statements.
Mhm.
The way we measure their health is to analyze those financial statements. And the way we then recommend treatment is to do the tax planning for the future to make sure that we can grow the business and achieve the goals that people are trying to achieve. Some examples that have happened recently. I actually was just working with an entrepreneurial couple here that in town. I'm in Homewood, Illinois, that owns a cafe, and they were very scared because they had none of their records put together. They gave us all the documentation. We put together all the records, and we took them from a situation where they could have potentially owed up to $600,000. And we took their tax liability all the way down to $10,000.
Oh my God.
So
talk about a difference.
That's the power of accounting and financial statements and knowing the tax laws and rules and regulations and being able to plan based on those tax laws, rules, and regulations. Because what I've actually also discussed with that client now is that, hey, because that was their 2023 tax returns.
Right.
What I've actually now discussed with those clients is, hey, let's get started on your 2024 so we can get that done, so we can get caught up to 2025, so that come 2026, when we're talking about your tax returns, we're talking about what level of refund you can expect, not what level of taxes you're going to have to pay. And I think you would agree that it is rather impressive to take someone from potential $600,000 liability over here to $10,000 refund over here. Yes. I'm sorry, $10,000 liability over here.
Yes, but
yeah. I'm sorry, I misspoke. But even more impressive than that is then being able to go in and be able to help that group not have to continue to pay taxes when April 15th comes around every year. Now we can go in and plan for it, make the payments ahead of time, and I can have the conversation with those same clients 2 years from now that's going to say, great news, JF, you're going to get a $10,000 refund, and JT, you're going to get a $7,000 refund. And do I know that that's the numbers that they'll be in 2 years? No, I don't. But I do know that if we do the tax planning for their situation, that they will absolutely have the power to determine what their tax situation will be come tax day.
Yeah, we have a question from someone, Yvette Jones Swanson, but she is Vet Mentors LLC, and she's asking, what's considered wages?
That is a tricky question. Are we talking about from the perspective of an employee or the perspective of an employer? I can give you both answers if you like.
Okay, yes, okay.
Okay. Also, I'll answer that question really quick. It's the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity. So from the perspective of an employee, wages are any money that you earn from an employment situation where you have voluntarily given that employer a W-4, and then that employer is required to file an information return called a W-2 on your behalf as the employee. From the employer's perspective, wages can be a little trickier than that, because wages for... We'll set up a meeting. Absolutely, no problem. 708-914-8220. Please call us. Leave a message. We'll get to you in the morning. Unfortunately, I don't have anyone here right now to answer the phones. So we wages from the employer's perspective, if we're talking about unemployment, can actually include contractors. Because if the contractor is doing the work under their social security number and they don't have what the Department of Employment Security considers to be an independent business that they are operating, then the Department of Employment Security will count those contractor payments that are paid out as contractor payments, and the information return that is issued to that contractor is a 1099. They will still count those payments as wages for the purposes of unemployment tax payments. Similarly, the IRS can come in and do what's called a worker determination audit, where if they believe that an employer is that a company is treating a group of workers as contractors, when the law would require them to treat them as employees, the IRS can come in, force the business to change from recognizing those people as contractors to recognizing them as employees, and force the business to then pay back payroll taxes based on the contractor payments they made, that the IRS will now say should have been filed as wages. And those payroll tax payments can be pretty huge, especially because we have to consider you're not going to be hit with any withholding tax on that because you didn't withhold any taxes. But if, let's say I paid out $1 million in contractor payments, and the IRS comes in and says, no, those are wages. So now I automatically owe the IRS $153,000 because 15.3% of the wages that I paid was due as Social Security, Medicare, FICA taxes. Okay. Now the remainder, in addition to that 153,000, I now also get a 25% failure to file penalty, a 10% failure deposit penalty, a 25% failure to pay penalty, and interest of 8% for the entire time that I did not pay the liability that I had, even though I didn't know I had the liability.
Yeah.
So if you want to avoid that very sticky situation as an employer, come talk to us about how your workers are classified and how they should be classified, because we can help you make that determination so the IRS doesn't do it for you. 708-914-8220.
Okay, David Milanec, really good to hear from you, president of Katz and Milanec, and extraordinary financial expert. Make sure you give him a call at 708-914-8220. I know I will. But in fact, what is the actual deadline for April?
April 15th.
April 15th.
If you get the extension, You don't have to file until October 15th. So if you're worried about it, call us now, 708-914-8220. We can get you the extension before April 15th, and then you don't have to file by April 15th.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much, David.
No problem. Always great. Look forward to it next time.
All right.